Okay.
Welcome everyone to the February meeting of Parks, Waterfront, and Resiliency for Community Board 3. Before we start, we have someone who's going to run the Zoom function. The committee members would like to thank Jackie Wong for coming in to run this meeting. Jackie, if you want to give some brief instructions on how we're going to run this meeting.
Sure. Let me pull up the Zoom guidelines. So here are a few guidelines. Welcome and thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Here are a few guidelines for tonight's meeting. First, the meeting is being recorded. If you are not a committee member, please sign in by entering your name and affiliation and any item you wish to speak to in the chat box. Otherwise, do not enter anything in the chat box, such as your point of views or discuss any issues. Please stay muted unless you are speaking. And please raise your hand if you wish to speak. If you are using a desktop computer, you can just use the raise hand function. If you are using your phone, you can just press *9. After each presentation, the chairperson would take comments and questions from board members first, then the public would have a chance to speak. You would have a 2-minute time limit. Again, everyone who wants to speak should raise their hands and get recognized by the chairperson first. This is to maintain the order of the meeting so we can move it better. That's all I have. I'm giving this back to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Jackie, for the introduction. We have an agenda which looks light on paper, but there are some issues that we need to discuss, but we are going to pace this so that we move at a good clip. I know typically our meetings have been very long, and we're trying to follow the advice that I've been given over emails and in person about trying to make these meetings a little shorter and a little more efficient. So I'm going to do the best I can, starting with this one. This is why we have sort of cleared the agenda for this particular topic. We're going to start off with committee members. We're going to take attendance, and I'm actually taking minutes also, so bear with me as I take minutes also. Kay Webster. David Adams. David Adams?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay.
Thank you. Yaron Altman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan. Carlin?
Here.
Ryan Gillian. Yes, we can hear you. Ryan Gillian. Valentina Jones.
Yes, here.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Robin Chattel. And Troy Velas. Troy?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right, we're also, as you know, minutes are deemed approved unless there's objections. Or are there any objections to the minutes?
Trevor, you didn't call me, Josie.
Josie, you're absolutely right. Josephine Velas, I put you with Troy, sorry. Josephine Velas.
I'm here.
Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you, my dear.
All right, are there any objections to the minutes?
No objection.
Thank you. Our first, I don't know if the parks manager is here for an update. Jamal? All right, if he joins us, we'll circle back to him.
Trevor, he's here. He's the 718 number.
For his leadership in the planning profession and his contributions to contemporary planning issues.
Jamal?
The 718 number is not muted, so you can speak.
Jamal, if you have an issue, can you, well, you're on the phone, so I don't think we're going to be able to, because you're unmuted at this time. All right, we're going to have to get back to that. First up on the agenda is an ESCR update, as we do every month. This one has, we're going to sort of put this into different parts. If you remember last month, we were talking about signage for the ESCR. We had a discussion about that, and they were slated to come back this month to give us what they've changed in response to our feedback. So if we want to start, I don't know if you're going to need screen sharing, but if you do, please let us know.
Yep, I'll share my screen, and it looks like I have, if someone can give me permission.
Jackie, can you give Maggie Hopkins permission? Or at least that's what the name says.
That's me.
You know,
Thanks.
gotcha.
Yes, I just made you the co-host.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Q Amiri from DDC is going to get us started here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Maggie. Hi, everybody. So as Trevor mentioned, this is an update to what we presented last month, but recognize that sometimes community members don't join every month back to back. So I'll give a really quick brief overview. On next slide, slide 2. Obviously, this is the project boundary, and everybody's well familiar with the Eastside Coastal Resiliency Project after all these years, but wanted to mention that this resiliency signage design is a specific scope to communicate the flood protection components of this project specific to this area. So the design team, this was one of the comments and feedback that came from the community, but also from PDC back when we were finalizing our design. And the design team here, AKRF and Pentagram team members, they've worked on this design that we're going to show you tonight. On the next page, I want to go really quickly on the feedback that we received last month, which was very helpful and productive, and really appreciate everybody taking the time to review and give us some inputs. From the list of items that we received, I'll just quickly go through everything that we heard last month. We had feedback on the actual language and the text that was reading too technical. So we took that back and coordinated with all of our agency partners and the design team, and took another look at that, and you'll see the result of that tonight. Hopefully it's much better, it's more readable and approachable, and tried to simplify it. And also we added more educational components into the text that relates to overall climate change and coastal resiliency, which is the whole reason of this project. And that's the principle of these signs here. There were some comments about the actual text and the background color, that it wasn't legible. The text was maybe too small, or the background was too dark and too distracting. And there were some recommendations to make it more approachable and more fun. So the design team took that to heart and came back with an update. We'll show you that the size increased, the sign size, the actual sign itself, the width of it is the same, but we have taller signs now. So that gave us additional room to work with enlarging the diagrams and adding a little more context to the language. And there was a request to have the signs translated to multiple languages. So we went through a lot of meetings and coordinations with our partner agencies, Parks and DOT, mainly because these signs are falling within their territories and the public right of way. And I want to preface that a lot of this today, whatever we're designing from a longevity point of view, we need to make sure that we're designing and implementing something that could live on after all of us, being DDC, the design team, the construction team, all of us, once we're done with this project and we walk away, we hand it off to our partner agencies. So at that point, DOT, Parks, DEP, everybody's responsible for their piece of this bigger project. And this sign is no exception to that. So we had to check in with all the agencies, or the Parks and DOT's agencies, the units, maintenance crew and maintenance teams, the signage teams that they have in-house. And whatever we design and finalize, we need to make sure that it's within the in-house capabilities of these agencies and their units. And also the maintenance crews are able to swap them out when they're vandalized or damaged or faded, or any issue that comes up that they need to be replaced. We have to make sure that we are complying with the DOT and Parks in-house standard process and standard design, standard signage criteria that they have, so they can maintain it afterwards. So all of that, the result is what you're going to see tonight. And I think I'll hand it off to Paula from Pentagram from here to walk us through the slides, and we can take questions afterwards.
So one thing I wanted to clarify is that we are looking for a resolution tonight.
Yeah,
so.
I meant to mention that. Trevor, I sent you a really quick email as a reminder. We are submitting this package that you're seeing tonight to PDC, Public Design Commission, by the end of this month for presentation in March. This is not the final presentation to PDC. They will give us feedback and we'll come back and finalize after that, but wanted to make everybody aware that we were collecting community feedback now. The next step is PDC, and we can show you folks the DDC can come back and show you the final result after the PDC.
Right, this is
hopefully approval.
PDC
this is preliminary, yeah. So but for this step right now, we need a resolution to be able to go to PDC. So with that, Paula, Maggie, and if I missed anything, please jump in.
Nope, I think that's it. Okay, Paula.
I was talking, but I didn't have unmute on. Hello, everybody. The signs were increased by half a foot. They were 1.5 feet initially in height. Now they're a full 2 feet. The size of the typography has increased quite a bit. So it's very legible when you go up to it. When you look at it on the screen, you have to imagine that you're looking at something that's 2 feet tall. We made a light gray background so that the type could be in black and be very legible. When we could, we reduced the copy as much as possible, though it still does seem to take a lot on this sign, but there's also a lot to say to explain what you're looking at. Next slide, please. The drawings are simple. They have simple captions to explain what parts you're looking at when you begin to look at what's there. Keep going, the diagrams. The type is very readable. It's simplified to a degree. It is technical information, but it explains it as clearly and simply as we could manage. And you're looking at diagrams where the lines were heavied up so you can actually see what is pointed to. And in some instances, the copy could be less. Next slide. Close-up of the drawing. Another version. Size of text. Flood wall, floodgate. And if you spend time reading them and looking at them, you will learn something about what this thing is about, how it helps stop flooding, and why it's there, and how it functions. They're positioned adjacent to the things they're talking about, so you see it in real life, and it's really like a caption for the places in terms of where it stands in relationship to the piece. So you might see the gate, and then you might realize what's going on in the building. It tells you what's happening inside them. And here is the actual size of the sign next to a grown-up human. The posts and things that they're placed on are in certain instances conforming to the Parks Department standards, and in other instances, depending upon where it is in the project, DOT. The selection of the kinds of poles they're on are completely reflective of the agencies that are representing the various areas they're in. So there's no individualistic design to this, but the information is completely part of the project, and you can learn about it from looking at it. Here are the sign locations.
Yeah, and I can jump in here. This hasn't changed since last time we were here. Trevor, it's up to you if you want me to go through this, or in the interest of efficiency, since it hasn't changed, we can skim over this and just come back to it if there's questions.
You can skim over it and we can come back to it.
Okay. So really that's it then. The rest of this is focused on the locations and how these fit into the context. So we can move to questions on the design updates if you'd like.
All right, so if you can go to the slide with the sign locations, I just want to leave that up again. I
Sure.
know I meant briefly, but a little.
Oh yeah, if you want it. Okay, not so brief that it doesn't exist.
Right.
So there are roughly 2 to 3 dozen signs across the full project area, which is, as you all know, 2.5 miles. And they're mostly tried to site them at the places where people first interact with the flood protection system. So say at Montgomery Street, where someone would be coming into contact with the flood wall for the first time, or where you cross over a bridge into East River Park and see the raised landscape for the first time. So it's a balance between wanting to educate people and not wanting to clutter the landscape and overwhelm people with the same sign over and over again.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to questions from the committee, I'm going to ask everyone, I see there's at least 62 participants, to make sure that you type your name and your affiliation, if you have one, in a chat box so that we can take attendance and have it on the record as to who attended this meeting. I know folks have joined since since we gave that request at the beginning. So we're asking again to make sure you type your name in the chat box.
The chat box has been disabled.
It's completely disabled?
Yes, it says chat disabled.
Oh, Colin, I actually see you type in Colin Chen, committee member, so I see your sign in. I think the hosts can see the whatever you type in.
No, it's
Okay.
totally disabled.
It says
I'm seeing chat disabled right now.
Yeah, it says
Yes.
on the chat, it says chat disabled.
Okay.
Okay, it's removed
There you
now.
go, you're back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you could just type in your name and your affiliation as I go to questions from the committee. Thank you. I see folks signing in now. I appreciate that. And thank you, Carlin, for pointing that out. I was wondering why no one signed in except for Carlin. Carlin, do you have a question? I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I do.
Sure.
Okay, since we're on the topic of signage, and this is a park that's going to be rebuilt going into the next several decades, it is handicap accessible. Has any of the signage provisions been made for the visually impaired?
Hi, this is Q from DDC. We checked with our agency partners, and unfortunately, Braille signs is not something that's provided for outdoors. And I would imagine there's some operations and maintenance limitations with that. So unfortunately, the answer is no. And again, what I was trying to explain earlier, what maybe I left out, was that this is not a typical sign that the agencies usually do as far as their regulatory or their wayfinding signs out in the public right of way. And of course, this project in its entirety has taken on a nature and life of its own. So a lot of our partner agencies have stepped out of their typical standard processes to get this project implemented. And this whole signage that you're seeing tonight is one of those examples that typically we don't do these kind of signs, but for educational purposes and for what this flood protection system is, it was a essential component to communicate with the visitors. So, but unfortunately, with that came a lot of limitations with translations and visually impaired and other things that we weren't able to accommodate.
I'm going to follow up briefly on that, and if Parks is on, I assume someone is here from Parks. Are there any parks in New York City that have that sort of accessibility with language and sight impaired?
They're not. They don't do that typically.
On any New York City parks?
We talked with the commissioner who's in charge of this, and his feedback was that they only provide translation for regulatory signs, so saying like what time a park closes, but these kind of educational signs they never translate. And then the visual impairments they don't do anywhere.
Thank you. Committee members, if you have a question or comment, can you please raise your hand? And Jack, if you can give me a hand in spotting people.
Sure.
Val. Val, you raise your hand?
Yeah, no, I basically, I want to save my question till the end because it's not really about the signage. This looks a lot better. I especially like S1.2. And I guess my one question is, where is this presentation? You know, how can we get this presentation when it's over and, you know, sit down and take our time and look at it, and other people from the community take their time and look at it?
Yeah, hi Val, it's Q. We'll upload this to our website as we do with all the other presentations. So it'll be up on the website by most likely tomorrow or Monday, the latest.
Okay. And so I'll just save my question to the end because my question isn't really about this. My question is really about things that were brought up at the full board meeting. Thank you.
With regards to the signs?
No, with regard to the project.
Okay, no, I understand. We're just separating this ESCR update into segments so that we can better manage it, because this portion actually requires a resolution.
Oh, okay. All right. So no, I thought it looked good. I liked S2. S1, the one thing I really didn't like, but that's me, is, you know, how many people were dead. I'm like, you know, not, you know, kind of like when you go and have a good time, you really don't want to read about the dead folks at the place. But I mean, otherwise, I think the pictures look very clear. The wording looks very clear. And, you know, the language looks like language that I think people will understand. So, you know.
Well, that being said, it's a big difference from last month because we certainly spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
There is some, I mean, they listen to our feedback and that's great. So I don't see any more committee questions. I'm sorry, Val already had her hand up. Are there any more questions from committee members before I do a brief? Okay, I see Wendy. Wendy, I see your hand raised. I understand that we have Jackie has volunteered to run the Zoom portion. So I'm also looking at the Zoom portion. So we're going to be a little slow this evening, just managing this. Also bear with us. Sure, Wendy, I'm just trying to get a queue of everyone who wants to ask a question. So if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand now, because we have obviously some other ESCR updates that we want to get through, and we want to make sure we get this resolution done tonight. So go ahead, Wendy.
I thought the QR code was a good idea, and it could lead to the Escr website, and further information could be there. On this slide, S1.1, that blue line the dotted blue line is going to be very hard to see a year or two down the road. So I just make that line bolder and make sure that's clearer. The last thing I want to say is lately the lights have been out on the Esplanade in the park. This is really for the park manager, from Tennis House all the way down to the amphitheater. So I've called it into 311, but it's really a safety issue. All the lights are out. So I want to put that out there in East River Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, seeing no more questions, I'm going to bullet point a resolution for us, which we will handle a little bit later on before tomorrow's exec meeting, just to get some of the positives that we've seen from this particular presentation a continuation of last month, actually. So committee members, please listen. This isn't in any particular order, just things that I've recognized, and you can add to this that they've increased the font size to make it more readable, that the text has been rewritten into a language that more people can understand, that they enlarged it. Well, that makes it even better. Thank you. Wow. So I'm going to read this. The text has been rewritten for all signs, increased the font size for legibility, both in the description and the diagram labels. The sign colors have been revised. The sign height has been increased to allow more breathing room for graphics. I will change that to something that's a little more palatable for folks. And I will change the last line. The diagram line weight has been increased for legibility. Put this up. Val, did you want to add anything to this resolution in terms of things that you liked?
I think that what they wrote here, says it, that the text has been rewritten for better comprehension by residents and people that frequent the park.
Any other committee member comments? Okay, so that being said, we're going to vote on this, and this is a bullet pointed resolution for these particular bullet points. So I'm going to do a roll call with committee members. And this is to approve the design of, or the redesign of the signs for educational purposes that will go with ESCR. I'll start with myself, Trevor Holland, yes. Kay Webster. David Adams.
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yes, I did. You're all on.
Okay, thank you.
Present, not voting. I work for New York City DOT. Thanks.
Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Ryan Gillian. Valentina Jones.
Yes.
Michael Marino. If Michael Marino, did you unmute yourself? Okay. Robin Chattel. Josephine Velez.
I'm here. Yes.
So you're voting yes on the redesign of the signage, correct?
On Montgomery, right?
Well, from Montgomery to 23rd.
Right.
Troy Velez.
Yes.
All right, thank you. This will obviously go to full board, and we'll put some whereases before these particular points to make it a proper resolution. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Continuing with the ESCR update, I'm going to ask for the team from DDC to continue their presentation on updates or things we've heard since last month. And this will be split into two different things, two different particular points. We're going to start with just general updates, and then I believe that they're going to talk about the value engineering study after the updates.
Thanks, Trevor. This is Desiree. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I think I just need, do I have share screen? If you could enable my screen sharing, please.
Sure. Give us a minute.
I just made you co-host.
Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Desiree Gazzo from HNTB Lero. We are the program managers, construction managers for the DDC Escr project. It's nice to see everybody again. So tonight, as Trevor said, we'll give a quick update on the few projects that we have, a very quick update on the PA2 progress work, and then I'm going to hand over the baton to DDC, who's going to give an update on the value engineering exercise, and then we'll quickly touch upon a couple of items in the what we've heard section. So I'll start off the presentation again with our project areas, which everyone is very familiar with, and then an overview of the contracts. So for project area 1, I think as many have heard, the bid was opened on the 8th of this month. Again, last month we had DDC speak about kind of the marginal impact to the overall timeline, the fact that the park will be able to remain open through spring of 2021. And once the contractor is selected, we will be working with him, on schedule, etc. Jeff, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on behalf of DDC for PA1.
Jeff, I see Jeff just joined, so if you want to repeat that.
Oh, okay. Jeff, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to PA1. I just briefly gave an overview of the bid opening and the marginal impact to timeline, etc.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having some technical Zoom issues. No, I guess I'm glad we're back sharing the good news of the bid opening. So that's just that's what I would like to share. So please go ahead, Desiree.
Thanks. For project area 2, as everyone knows, we're in construction, the Astor Levy Playground area, and then in Sky Cove Park around Solar One. If you've been over in that area, you will see that it is now, a construction site, and we are working with, the stakeholders in that area continually on updates and etc. Posting the advisories and bulletins. And taking questions in the PIMA inquiry system. And then parallel conveyance, the release for bid will be in the upcoming weeks. And then the bid opening is anticipated in early 2021. So moving right along into PA2 anticipated activities, we have the completed side is growing. And then in progress, we have the Solar One construction fencing. We still have ongoing test pits and demolition activities. The night work is continuing on the FDR West Service Road between East 23rd and East 25th Street. And that will be ongoing for a few more weeks. The traffic detour and utility work at East 23rd Street and the East Service Road under the FDR Drive. And that's kind of newer work that just recently started, and we're working with DOT on the new traffic pattern there, if there's anyone that drives over in that area. In progress is also the erosion control for the upcoming work in Solar One. And then upcoming work will include sewer, manhole, and catch basin work on the FDR East Service Road. And then we'll begin that work in Solar One area that we've been preparing the staging for and the construction fencing there. And then there is the utility relocations, which will continue kind of in that northern part of the project area in various locations. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeff from DDC, Jeff Margulies from DDC, and he will go over the value engineering slides.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to present tonight. I know there have been tons of questions about the value engineering exercise that occurred in 2018. For those of you that aren't aware, the city responded. There were some FOIL requests we received. There was also a lot of questions from Councilmember Rivera and Borough President Brewer about the value engineering exercise. And so the city responded formally to the FOIL requests that we received. There were some to parks, there were some to OMB, and there were some to DDC. I think I got the 3 agencies. I don't know if anyone else, other agencies received them. So we responded formally to the FOIL requests, and we also posted the two understandably redacted reports, and we can talk about that further, onto the ESCR website. So that's just the kickoff, and then we tried to put down some information that will hopefully help guide the conversation. I know there will be additional questions, but at least we could get the conversation started. So just going back to the beginning, and I know some of you know this already, so it may be a little repetitive, but in 2018, at approximately 40% design, OMB hired some consultants to conduct the study. So basically, OMB has as a unit within, there's a unit with OMB, excuse me, that their main goal is to conduct these studies. So they conduct about 15 value engineering studies per year. The other client agencies that we work with also conduct their own studies on important projects. And again, the idea is laid out here. The aim is to ensure the project was on track and meeting its overall resiliency and HUD mandating goals, and review constructability, cost, and detailed engineering questions. So that was the goal for the ESCR study. And what came out of that was the Raise the Park plan, which again, I think I don't need to go back in history. I think everyone sort of understands where we are now. But the Raise the Park plan was selected as the preferred alternative. And the second document that is on the ESCR website is a shorter feasibility analysis that looked at some of the specifics on the Raise the Park plan and some of the constructability concerns that were laid out and that we've spoken about publicly before. And so we tried to just put a little graphic here. It's a little hard to follow for us as well. There was a lot that had to go into this project. But, you know, I said this on the last meeting, and I'll say it again, and I'm sure I'll say it several times tonight, but the final environmental impact statement, which is also right below the value engineering documents on the ESCR website, and which had been there for a long time, are the city's final conclusions as to the preferred alternative. And we'll go into a little bit more detail of where you can find that in the FEIS on a subsequent slide, as well as the environmental impacts that are required for the city to evaluate when they're doing a project of this magnitude. So if you want to continue, Desiree. So again, we sort of went over this before, and for those of you that have had a chance to look at the documents that are posted, there were numerous agencies involved in this value engineering study, including Mayor's Office of Resiliency, Parks, DOT, OMB, of course, DDC, City Hall folks from the Deputy Mayor's offices, DEP, and City Law. So this is all something I've stated before, but it was an exercise evaluating design alternatives at 40% design, and the draft work product led to the final work product in the FEIS. So I think the main question, I know we've spoken to some of you in the recent past about the redactions. So I can tell you there were multiple high-level conversations with general counsels from several of the agencies listed here, where they went through line by line, literally, the information that was in the draft value engineering study. And you'll notice a lot of them, I actually went through the full 300 and some pages myself. A lot of them are sketches, and they're just that. They're sketches that the team was looking at as they were sitting there talking about the different options that they were considering for the different alternatives. They're not final conclusions. There were a lot of assumptions in the report that the consultants made, and those were also redacted. In addition, there were some concerns about sensitive infrastructure. So we spoke extensively after the design was switched to the Raise the Park plan about the real concerns we had about the Con Ed transmission lines that run north to south adjacent to the FDR, and what the plan would be to literally build tunnels underneath the ground where a man or a woman who had to fix those transmission lines would be able to walk, and how they would be built, and who would build them, and how much they would cost. And so that was a big redaction in the study, as well as some DEP sewer lines and how the wastewater gets from the east side of Manhattan to the sewage treatment plants. So there's some sensitive information that also had to be redacted. You want to go on, Desiree? And this just sort of breaks down, for those that haven't had a chance to read the two documents, this just sort of breaks down the different sections that are in those two documents. And I know we heard from some of you, we keep referring to the FEIS and the importance of the FEIS, and the FEIS is the final word on this project. So we thought we would just highlight here, and of course this will be on our website, the project alternative section in the FEIS, which literally goes through the 5 different alternatives that the city considered as part of this project. And so here is where, if someone wants to read the FEIS, it's obviously an extremely long document, but this is where we would point you to take a look further at the city's deliberative process to come up with the conclusions that we came up with to the Raise the Park plan. And then just some takeaways. Again, I mentioned a deliberative planning process for ESCR. The goals, of course, reviewing overall resiliency and HUD mandated goals, costs, detailed engineering, and overall constructability. Moving the flood wall from next to the FDR, not only for the concerns with the Con Ed lines, but also the visuals for some of the residents along the water. We'll get into the impacts to the community in a second, but Raise the Park plan eliminates some of the complexities. Again, this was a tabletop exercise where the team literally sat around and went through each of the different value alternatives, just considering different ways to make this a better project and to eliminate as many complexities as possible. There are obviously still complexities that remain. I don't think anyone could sit here and say this is an easy project, but we tried to do our best as a collective. Again, all those agencies sitting around trying to come up with ways to make this a better project and to make sure that we provided the proper protection for the community. Utilities and infrastructure, of course, this is the ultimate goal, is to, as I mentioned, to provide that protection to the community, impacts to the community. I know we've spoken about this before many times, but we were not able to shut the FDR full time. So there would have been night work along the FDR, multiple years, literally constructing this flood wall. And we had serious concerns, not only about actually doing the work with cars zooming past, working at night with construction crews and the safety of those construction crews. And then of course the noise that comes with working at night and driving piles into the ground to build a wall that won't fall down, frankly. That's my non-engineering term, but I think people understand what that means. And then of course, last but certainly not least is East River Park. So by raising the park and moving the flood wall underneath the park towards the water, we were able to protect the park for generations to come. Desiree, I don't know if you want to take over.
Thanks, Jeff. Yep, I was just unmuting. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Compost relocation. I think Marguerite is on the phone or on the meeting from DSNY.
Yep. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, great. And if you can see me too, if anyone wants to. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm here. I work with Ben Ireland, who I know is usually at this meeting, or at least I believe has been in the past couple months. So yes, what I can tell you, I
Marguerite,
remember.
Can you just identify yourself and where you're from?
Oh, sure. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Marguerite Manella. I'm the senior manager with the New York City Department of Sanitation's Bureau of Recycling and Sustainability. So I work on the team that's working directly with LESCC on a number of different composting initiatives, and has been for almost 30 years or more than 20 years for sure. So anyway, I haven't, by the way, but our team has. So right, regarding the East River Park, the East River Park compost yard operated by LESCC, we have at this point looked into over 50 locations. We're working on the site relocation with LESCC for anybody who wasn't at the last meeting. We've at this point looked over 50 locations, combing different lists that different agencies have provided, including our own. And we have not found very many suitable options, but we continue to follow up on leads whenever possible. We have submitted, Christine proposed a location under the Williamsburg Bridge that we have submitted to City Hall, and they're doing a detailed review of the feasibility of that location with DOT, who currently has jurisdiction over the site. And we're waiting for City Hall's decision on this site. And there's another option currently on the table that we're still looking into for LACC. It would be a split site approach. There's a small lot at 388 Hudson Avenue. And there's another lot in East New York that's a half an acre, which is, so between the two, there might be enough space for them to continue their operations. We've discussed this split approach with LACC, and they are working with us to determine what added operational costs would this would be related to this option, since it's in two very disparate locations. And that's really the update I have for you today. Do you normally take questions now, or?
I'm going to hold off, but I understand that there might be some questions for that particular item, so I'm going to segment that out in a bit. I just want to finish the rest of this.
Sure.
Update.
Okay, I will stay tuned.
Great, thanks, Marguerite. Yeah. And I just wanted to hit upon two other items in what we've heard, again, very briefly. I know, everyone is very concerned with Section 3 and MWBE, so we kind of keep this on here as of what we've heard, because we are very aware, and we are working towards, of course, reviewing the contractor's plans as they come on and monitoring that, and working with our sub-consultant, Bowie Studios, on the upcoming Section 3 and MWBE events that will happen, within this next year. So we ask that you stay tuned for those upcoming events. And, we'll certainly reach out once we have more information on that. We have been receiving a few questions on kind of budgeting, and we just wanted to put up here the comptroller's checkbook website. So if there are any questions, we can provide, more information, but I know that has been a question that has come up on this and other meetings. So we just wanted to provide that link here for you. And Trevor, that's what we have for this evening.
All right, thank you. What we're going to do now is first go to committee members, but I want to split the questions up a bit. I know initially we talked about an update, so I'm going to ask committee members if they have any questions on the update portion of this presentation. And Val, do you have a question about the update section of this?
Yeah.
Okay, not so much the compost shard or the value engineering study, but the first portion of the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess my question is, in terms of the bid being open, this is one of the slides that was generally showed up and down. Anyway, this is why my question about the bid. This right here represents to me Baruch, Lillian Wall, Jacob Reese, which are mainly New York City Housing Authority, majority people of color, people of low income, people that if they got flooded, I don't know that with New York City Housing Authority having such a long time just to come up with some money for basic repairs, that if people had to evacuate for flooding, that they would be returned. And so this is basically those particular developments and them being flooded. And so this was shown, I don't know how many times, but anyway, the issue that kind of gets me is looking at that, I had one kind of thought. And then yesterday at the Land Use Committee, a report was given planning together a new comprehensive planning framework for New York City. And in the executive summary, it says, and by 2100, many neighborhoods, including Lower Manhattan, are expected to flood every day at high tide due to sea level rise. So my question is, in terms of this bid being open, I think people are very concerned about how things are progressing in area 1, which is this area, which is people mainly of color, low income, New York City housing, and them being protected from flood. And especially when somebody has a report out saying that it's expected to flood every day. When I looked at that, I don't know what I thought. I thought like Sandy or something like that. But when I look at this every day, and this, the reference for this, is New York City Panel on Climate Change 2019 report, executive summary. So my question is, the bids were open. What are we talking about in terms of moving along, in terms of protecting the people in Baruch, Lillian Wall, Jacob Reese, low income people of color? And let me just say, one of the things that gets me to that I feel like we are in a different era is one of the first things that our new president did was an executive order on racial equity. And to me, this is an issue of racial equity, that we have folks in this particular area that need protection from floods. If they got flooded and they had to evacuate, I don't know where they would be. So in terms of the bids open, what are we talking about here in terms of getting this done and protecting those people, their lives, their children?
All right, thank you, Val. I'm also gonna, Val, you have an echo, and I'm just letting you know because I've heard it on your computer before. And I don't know if you, because your speaker and if you're using a laptop, it's generally the speaker and the microphone are too close, but just to let you know.
Okay.
No, I know you can't fix it. I'm just letting you know.
I don't have the slightest idea what to do. Okay. I feel like I'm good over 65 that I could even do this. So I have no idea what to do.
Right,
None.
thank you. So if you want to answer that question, and also I'm just going to tag along with her statement. When do you expect for the flood wall to be installed in terms of protection for this particular neighborhood? That portion of the project.
Yeah. So. Thank you both. Yes, I mean, I think, again, as I mentioned, I'm glad we're here with a bid opening under our belts. If we hadn't had a bid opening, I think this would be a much more difficult update, of course. So there are numerous steps that we have to go through in order to get the contractor on board, but that remains, the start date remains late spring. And, as we go through that process, we'll certainly provide updates. In terms of the flood protection, that is something we'll have to come back to you with, because I don't have the answer for you exactly today. But again, it is our #1 priority to build this flood protection as soon as humanly possible.
Another question. You said, I'm not sure if it's this section, but in terms of takeaways, I didn't see Con Edison there. And one of the big issues is this thing that was shown to people, which is, this is the old plan, and this is Edison. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. This is Con Edison here. This is where they had previously planned to do it. And this is Con Edison remains. One of the things about the takeaway in Con Edison, I don't know what to do with this. Okay, all right. One of the things about the takeaway in Con Edison is the fact that there are a lot of Norks down here. And when you talk about being next to some Con Edison lines, you were talking about people not having electricity. So you are talking about older people that may have some challenges, such as they use a walker, a scooter, whatever. You're talking about them being stuck in their apartment if there's something that happens to Con Edison line. So my question is, why was Con Edison removed from the takeaways when there are so many Norks down here? You cannot get on the Avenue A bus and not have somebody with a walker or a wheelchair by the time you get to 14th Street. So I don't think Con Edison should ever be taken away, because we are talking about people, and if somebody is on some oxygen or something else that's electric oriented, they are stuck. They're basically imprisoned in their house. And I'm almost positive that they took the city to court about that because of people with disabilities being stuck in their apartments. So I don't know. That's my question.
Let him answer.
Sure. So I don't know if we put the words Con Ed on that last slide, the takeaway slide, but that was, of course, one of our concerns was one of the goals of the value engineering study and frankly the design was to try to eliminate as many complexities as possible. And that was one of the major complexities, the Con Ed transmission lines that, from my understanding, we don't work at Con Ed, but they power a lot of lower Manhattan. And these are high voltage lines. So that by eliminating building the flood wall on top of these lines, we eliminated some of that work and some of that major complexities that would have been part of that process.
Can you go back a slide? I think there's another slide that talks about
this takeaway is not.
And we actually just had this conversation with the folks up at Waterside Plaza. They're built over the water around 25th Street. They also have a similar elderly population. And my understanding, again, Con Ed, whenever we're working on a project, Con Ed has inspectors and a team there to monitor what we're doing. We have certain limitations. The city, that is, has certain limitations as to what we can touch in terms of their infrastructure. We can tell them to get out of the way, but we can't necessarily touch their lines. And my understanding has always been they do whatever they can not to turn off power. And that I'm sure will be the case here as well. So if we may have to do some work next to the current Con Ed lines that we keep talking about, but not the same level of complexity that we would have had to do if we were building a flood wall right on top of them. So, we will certainly.
Please include that, because we have seniors that are very concerned about that. Going down 10 flights of stairs, 20 flights of stairs becomes a whole different issue. If you're in a wheelchair, walker, scooter, you're in prison with things like that. And so I'm just saying, please include that.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely part of the conversation. So we have on every project, not just a project of this magnitude, we have what are called alignment meetings where we sit down with all the utilities and tell them exactly what we plan to do. And they have to plan accordingly. So if it means, again, I don't know exactly.
I think we're going to move on, but I think what she's saying is that in those takeaways, when you produce these slides, one thing that people need to see is you have a line here that talks about. I know we talked about this early on when we talked about switching the plan, but you need to include that in one of the slides that says that one of the reasons is the Con Ed transmission lines and the fact that you have to build tunnels around them. You went into them verbally, but we kind of need to see them on paper so people can
that is a fair point. Thank you. We will definitely add that to going forward.
All right, thank you. Now, are there any other committee members who have questions? It is tough to find this. Who have questions about the update portion itself? Okay. Now, I know folks have raised their hands, and if you want to lower them, if your question is not related to the update itself, because we have two other sections we're going to talk about, but for this portion, it's for the update itself. So if it is not, and that includes the ecology center and the value engineering, which we're going to get to, but these questions are only about the update. So I'm going to go to Fanny first. I think you have a question about the update portion, correct? Fanny, I can't hear you. Can anyone hear Fanny?
Nope.
Okay, we're going to. Fanny?
Okay, how about now? Okay.
Now we can hear you. The questions are about the update portion only.
Yeah. Is there any way you could tell us about what's going on with the bids? I mean, like, are you guys close to getting a contractor? I mean, are you guys close to accepting bids? And is there any information you could give us about that?
Sure. So again, the bid opening was just last Monday on the 8th. So what happens now is we go through the line by line to ensure that the contractors are accounting for everything that's part of the project. And they put cost estimates into every single item that is required to be built. And then we go through and collaborate with them if necessary. And then ultimately we're required by law to accept the lowest responsible bidder. Again, this is a unique project, so it's a little different. These are very sophisticated contractors. This is not a mom and pop shop. So once we are ensured that the lowest responsible bidder is ready to is appropriate, then we would award the contract.
Right. I mean, I don't need you to go over the process. I'm just asking you, like, how is it looking? I mean, are you guys close or?
Yeah, well, we got we've got several responsible bidders, excuse me, and then we just have to ensure that the bids they put together are appropriate, and then we'll take it from there.
Do you have it? Do you know how long that'll take?
I'm sorry.
I'm going to follow up on that because I know what you're asking. I think we're looking for a timetable you've got the bids on the 8th. There's got to be a closure date for this. There's got to be a time of where you're going to sort of take the bids.
As I said,
that's also following up on Val's point of when are we going to get started with PA1 or the
as soon as we have the announcement for the lowest responsible bidder, we will come back to you and share that information.
And is there a timetable for this?
I can jump in and just quickly clarify a little bit. Sure. And again, this goes back to, I know you guys don't want to hear about the overall process, but things are interconnected with each other. So a while ago, back in summer, we presented a long presentation about how generally procurement phase works and the step-by-step process of that. And this connects to that. Right now, we received, as Jeff said, we received the bids, we opened them, and we're in the middle of our bid analysis. This bid analysis internally at DDC with our consultants takes about a week or so, give or take one to 2 weeks. We have to look at the bids that were submitted and make sure that it all complies with the requirements that we put out there, and look at the cost and the budget that they put forward. From that point, it goes into the hands of our contract and accounting and ACO teams, and the lowest bidder out of whoever put a bid forward gets selected, and it takes about a couple of months, 2 to 3 months, give or take. I'm not exactly sure, because that's the part that Jeff isn't sure right now. We have to get back to you, but it will take a few months to register the contract. Once the contract is registered, then the contract is awarded. We have an award meeting. There's a sort of a kickoff type of meeting with the contractor that we give them a briefing of how things work. And HMTB Lira, please chime in if I'm missing any steps or if it's out of sequence. But all of this is going to go into, my best guess right now, and if I'm misspeaking here, HMTB Lira, please jump in. I'm going to say late spring into early summer is when all of this will be done and finalized. And typically this takes a much longer time, but believe it or not, this is the expedited process specifically for this project that everybody's come together to figure out how they can make this happen sooner. Ahmed or anybody else, if I missed anything, please correct me.
All right, thanks. What we will do is in the upcoming months, follow up on that. I think that is critical, especially considering the area that it's going to protect. But I think we're going to focus on that in another meeting. Are there any questions that have to do with the first portion of this presentation, which is the updates only? And I see Lindsay has her hand raised. Lindsay, you have a question about the update?
I had a question more, a brief question on the procurement process about how many potential bidders this went out to, just knowing that we only had 2 that came back, which is a relatively small number.
So we send it out widely. So we have a network of contractors that we share information with. So literally hundreds. We also posted on our website. There's various mechanisms that our industry relations
on
team.
This, you have hundreds on this scale of work that would be responsive to this scale of and unique nature of this project.
I'm speaking in general about how we contact the industry.
No, and I'm just
there. So right there was.
Let's hold on one second. I want to get in, okay. I don't want to get to back and forth. I think the question is has to do with how many responded as opposed to how many that was sent out.
We got tons of questions leading up to the bid opening. We received 2 interested bidders. One of them is a joint venture, so multiple contractors teaming up. There were some requirements in the contract. They had to demonstrate that they have the capacity to do this work. So they had to demonstrate they've done similar type work in the past. This is a large project as you all know. So this wasn't some mom and pop contractors. These were sophisticated contractors that were bidding on this project. And this is all public information. I mean, we put this out to the world when we put out our contracts.
Okay, I'm going to move on because that's obviously a larger topic. I see two other questions. If they have to do with the updates, please keep your hand up and I will go to you. Tony?
Hey, thanks. It's just a very quick question about the
Sure.
bid. Was there anything that, did the contractors put any stipulations in about the fill? The fill was a key piece of the of this plan.
I don't know if one of my colleagues can specifically speak to the fill question. If not, we can certainly come back to the committee.
I'm sorry, is it Tony or Troy? I'm sorry, I mixed it up.
Tony.
Can you, Tony, hi Tony, sorry. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your question?
Yeah, one of the key pieces of this alternative, or one of the questions was the viability of a contractor supplying this quantity of fill, and it was sort of left as a question mark. And so I just didn't know, I mean, now is that with the bids in, kind of a two-part question. Did the contractors put a hard number in that, or did they put an allowance, or, you know, how was that addressed in the bids?
I think we have to get back to you on that one. The bids are still under review and we haven't really released the details yet. We're, again, like I said, we're still in that sort of internal review process. So let's put a pin in this if you don't mind, and we'll get back to you.
And I think, you know, I think there was something in one of the value engineering documents that mentioned the fill. And that, again, that was a very early comment that has progressed. Again, the design has progressed significantly since then. That was 40%. And now the design is complete. So I think that question has already been resolved. But again, we can get back to you guys.
But let's save that for an update at the next meeting. And also, I imagine that if someone could post that question to the group that meets, I'm drawing a blank for some reason. But there is a way to submit questions that have to be followed up. The CAG, yeah, the Community Advisory Group, for them to follow up on that, so that when we come back, we have some more solid information. Gonna go next. The next thing we're going to discuss, and I know that DSNY is still on, or I hope they're still on, is the compost yard. There was a brief update. Does anyone have any questions that only relate to the compost yard? Christine, that was quick. You probably got a vaccine appointment with that quick raise hand.
Actually, vaccine appointments, I got one for my husband.
Hi,
in the
Christine.
Bronx.
Right, I know, because that was quick.
And it was sheer luck, but this was quickness. Hi, this is Christina from the Lower East Side Ecology Center, and I just wanted to also find out whether somebody from Parks is at this meeting today, because last week or last month, we posed a question to the Parks Department, and I think Melissa, who was there, couldn't answer it because she wasn't working on this project, and it predated her working at the project. And the question was really posed by me, outlining that we had a design for the compost yard and an agreement to incorporate it into Escr. And then I asked what happened with that thinking. And my additional question also has to do with the value engineering exercise, as our friends like to call it. They mentioned these constraints, and one of the constraints that's mentioned in that study is that the compost facility may be redesigned and constructed after Escr. And I'm really puzzled about that coming up in this value engineering study in April of 2018 or 2019, and then the city sitting down with us, DDC and Parks, and discussing how to incorporate the compost yard into the design of Escr. So I'm just like totally confused and still want really answers of what is it going to be? Is there a plan to create a compost yard into East River Park? Thanks.
So I know I'm going to say this a lot tonight. So that was an early comment in the VE study. I think, unfortunately, ultimately, that question lies with the Parks Department. I'm sorry they're not here tonight, but that is something we can relay to them and have them come to the next meeting and provide an update.
Well, they promised to come to this meeting and give us an update about it because they were asked at the last meeting. And quite frankly, we've been going on and on for a year now or 2 years trying to find answers, and there never is one. So it's beyond frustrating that there is no answer to that. And I think it's unacceptable.
I mean, in their defense, I know it's a complicated question. I know that's something that they're grappling with across the city. But
I'm sorry, but I disagree with you. It's not a complicated question. It's a question of political will, and it's a question of realizing that we are living in the 21st century with a climate crisis, and building a park that is in response to things that happen because of climate crisis, and then destroying a program that addresses that and does something about it every day of the year is hypercritical at the least.
We will absolutely relay that to Parks again.
Well, here's what I'm going to do, because we could probably stay on this topic for quite some time.
Yeah, I can't speak for them. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Right, but what we're trying to do, because we've had very long meetings, is sort of focus on one or two things every meeting, so that we get a chance to really discuss it. So, Christina, what I'm going to do is put that on. It may not be on next month's, what it may be, depending on what we have at tomorrow's meeting, but I'm going to put that particular topic just to make sure we bring in someone from Parks who can address that particular question. Because I hear you, and I don't always know who's going to be at this meeting. There's 60 people here, and it's kind of surprising that no one from Parks is here, but that's a whole nother story. But we will get into that. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Trevor.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there any other questions about the compost yard? Right, thank you. Now, I know some folks had their hands raised for value engineering. First, I want to go to the committee. Are there any questions from the committee about the value engineering portion? And if you have a question, please raise your hand just so I can get an idea of how many people are going to ask questions and try and manage the time here. I'm talking to everyone at this point. So Val, can you ask your question on the value engineering portion?
Okay. I'm looking at the draft EIS because the FEIS doesn't really have a good, what do you call this, bibliography. And what I didn't see in the bibliography, in section 10, I see list of preparers, chapter 10, list of preparers. I think O and B is down here. They're the first ones. But chapter 13, I don't see the value engineering report. And chapter 13 of the draft EIS is the ESCR project, the reference documents. And I don't see that listed as a reference document. And so that's my question there. How come it's not listed as a reference document in the draft EIS? And like I said, when I looked at the reason I'm not citing the FEIS is that I don't think their bibliography section was as comprehensive as the DEIS, because I looked at them both. So that's my question. How come the value engineering report, the value engineering study is not listed in chapter 13 of the DEIS in the reference documents?
Okay, so if someone wants to take that question.
I think that may be something, I apologize, we may have to get back to you on, because I don't have it in front of me, and I don't know the answer at this particular moment, but we will take that back. Again, OMB and Parks were the lead agencies on the EIS.
Just so that we make sure we get an answer on this, do you understand her question?
Yes, fully.
I want to make sure that we get an answer to that. I understand because Val read the entire EIS, so she knows the document. that it's hard to pinpoint. So we want to make sure we get an answer to that particular question.
So just so that you know, it was chapter 10, the list of preparers, O and B is the first one.
Yep.
Chapter 13, the reference documents, I didn't see it there. And you have 2.5 pages of reference documents. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions from committee members? All right, so I'm going to move to folks in the public, and keep in mind that I have not put up that 2-minute timer. I know folks don't like to see it, but it's actually, it helps us manage the meeting, and it's also helps, you know, to respect our neighbors and people who are attending this meeting who also want a chance to speak. So I'm not going to put that up unless I feel that I need to. So please ask your question. I know we all want to make a statement, but it really helps move this meeting if you can get that question answered. So I'm hoping that everyone can sort of stick with that so we can move this meeting along. This is in no particular order. I'm also co-hosting this meeting because the person who normally does this is not here. So just bear with me as I read the names off, and everyone will get a chance to ask the question. But we're going to go in this order, so prepare yourself after the person before you finishes. Arnett, Tommy, Fanny, and Daniel. And if there's anyone else, please raise your hand now. So that, and then Diane. All right, so Arnett. Arnett, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello? You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I just have a quick question. I'm sorry if this is something that's been covered before, but the scope of this job, is this something that has been done? Are we replicating something that's already been done? And if so, did we is there sort of did we reach out to those engineers? And also in the, I guess in the vein of having a Black History Month, how many of these engineers or contractors have we reached out that have been women or persons of color? Just wanted to know, just for my edification. Everything else is a little above me and I need to catch up, but I wanted to know that.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for being brief and asking the questions. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
So yeah, so there was review of other similar flood resiliency projects when this was designed. There was consultation with other countries, frankly, that have done this type of work. And in terms of MWBEs and women of color, we have a pretty sophisticated Office of Diversity and Industry Relations that their main goal is to ensure that our contractors meet those MWBE goals, excuse me. And they work with MWBs all day long to try and ensure that they're included as subs in our projects, as well as prime contractors for their own projects. So we can provide a little more information if that's helpful to you on the work that we do every day with MWBs.
Jeff, can you also, or someone from the team, talk about, I know there's a person or firm that's been hired to specifically cover that
Yes.
MWBE issue.
Right. So we spoke about it on the CAG at the last meeting. So we have a sub-consultant that is, her job is to put together events specifically around this issue. I think Desiree has it in the what we heard section. So that is something we do we do need to come back to everyone on. This group, as well as the council member, has been extremely vocal on making that happen. And we'll have updates in the very near future about events that are coming up.
Thank you. Next is Tommy.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about the reports. Hundreds of pages have been redacted, including who participated and who was sitting at the table. And the other thing that was totally redacted were the advantages and the disadvantages of the plan. Why do you think the community is not entitled to see those documents. What prevents you from showing them to us? And why aren't you showing them to us? My other question goes back to the bid. As we know, one came $55 million over the engineer's estimate, and the other is $117 million over the engineer's estimate. Are you required to accept this low bid, or are you now negotiating with the contractors and both bids are still live?
So I'll start with the end first. So yes, both bids are still active. As we mentioned, Q sort of went into it a little bit. So we literally go line by line. We have a team. This is all they do. It doesn't sound very exciting, but they're very sophisticated in what they do, and they look at what the bids are, and they figure out what the estimates are for every single item that was included in the contract. So that is something that is ongoing as we speak. And that is the process to determine that these bids are responsive. In terms of the value engineering studies, so just to clarify, the names that were redacted are consultants. So the names that are not redacted, as you can probably tell, are city employees. So all the different folks from the agencies that we mentioned in the presentation that were present for the different days that this project was reviewed. So again, the consultants, I mean, you see the name of the main firm that was hired, that OMB hired to do this work is there. So that's obviously something that we shared. In terms of the advantages and disadvantages, I understand. As I mentioned, there was a very deliberative process with the general counsels from several agencies as well as City Hall, and they went through line by line to identify what they wanted to release and what they didn't. Just to take a step back, so I mentioned that OMB has a specific unit that does approximately 15 value engineering studies every year. They generally are of the opinion that nothing should be shared with the public unless it's a conclusion that is a fact about the particular project. So, you know, we tried very hard to include as much as possible. I know the council member immediately reached out to us via letter to our commissioner, as well as I believe City Hall, to the mayor, excuse me, to ask that we take another look at the redactions to see if further information could be shared. You know, I literally went through, I mean, I can show you my sheet here. I went through all the different sections and wrote down what the value alternatives were and what, you know, was redacted. As I mentioned, the sketches, I understand the advantages and disadvantages. A lot of them were very technical, and we're dealing with some of that sensitive information that I talked about before. I understand that having all of that information out to the public would have been helpful for this meeting. You know, all I can say is that I will take that back. Again, the council member is already trying to push us to get more information out, and we can hopefully see if that's possible.
I just want to correct one thing you said, because you said that a decision was not made. A decision was made based on these documents. So that is not covered under the freedom of your redactions. This was a decision-making document.
So again, this was a document that led to the raise the park alternative, and the design was not finalized, as you know. So the design continued after this point. Different information was included after this point. The FEIS process was ongoing before this.
But you changed the design.
Hey, Tommy, let's do this, because
I just want to make it clear.
Tommy, I know, but
yeah,
there are other folks who want to ask questions,
there were,
and I don't want to back and forth.
Go ahead.
No, I understand what you're saying, Tommy. There were assumptions made by the consultants at that particular time based on what was shared at that particular table about the project, and they made certain assumptions that didn't prove to be the final position that the city took in the FEIS and the final design document. So again, I know I'm parsing hairs here, but that is why some of that information, the advantages and disadvantages, were redacted.
So Jeff, what I'm hearing is that you're going to take this back, and you've heard from the council member as well as the community as to if further information from these documents can be released. Because I'm noting this for our next meeting. Hopefully some of the other information may be released, because I think that's a good, sorry, I'm reading a message. I think that's a good point. And I know folks don't like to receive redacted information. It always feels uncomfortable and always feels like the city is hiding stuff. I know your explanations have been, we understand the explanations, but still I think people need to see as much information as possible. We haven't, from a community board standpoint, read the entire document. I know I got it right before the weekend, and I was not going to spend my weekend looking at that document. I think the office is also going to take a look at it so we can delve into it a little later on at a next meeting. We just haven't had the time to look at it.
But just to clarify,
sure.
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the advantages and disadvantages are things that we said during this presentation. They were things that we've said publicly about the complications with the Con Ed lines, about the complications with having night work on the FDR, the ability to raise the park and rebuild the park and protect it for generations to come, the ability to rehab more pedestrian bridges and provide better access to folks, to protect the view. I mean, they're all the things that, again, trust me, if we had an unredacted report, it would make our lives much easier. I'm just, it's hard. It's easy for
Jeff,
me to say there are
no, I understand, but from our standpoint, I did read the entire FEIS multiple times over multiple evenings to write many resolutions on this. I just want to make sure that this doesn't change the position of our resolution. My initial look is that it does not, because of the other reasons that you mentioned, but we've heard from the public. We want to make sure that it doesn't change our position. That's all.
Yeah,
So
no, I mean, I think we all understand the frustration.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. So the next person, and I just lost my list, I think is Fanny.
Yeah, hi. So can you explain exactly what is 40% of the design when you did the study? Is it 40% of the whole design, or was it at that point, it was only 40% that was done on the design?
Sure. Hopefully one of my colleagues can help. I'm not a designer nor an engineer, but our designs are, as I'm sure you can imagine, especially for a project like this, extremely complicated and extremely detailed. So there are different phases of the design. And so and maybe Eric or Q can jump in, but they get to a certain point,
Jeff,
and then
Jeff, I can jump in, sorry.
I was just going to say, they get to a certain point of conceptual design and they say, okay, this is where everything is going to be, but they don't go into too many details. And then in order to move to that next step, they make sure they have, parks, DOT, DEP, everyone's buy-in, and then they say, okay, this is exactly where it's going to be. And now we're going to start getting more detailed in that process. So take it from there, Q.
Yeah, and just adding to what Jeff said, Fanny and everybody else, just taking a step back on a higher level, bird's eye view, I want everybody to be very clear that value engineering is a standard process of the design and construction industry. It's not something that's specific and special to this project and to our agency or to the city, New York City government only. This is a very standard process for pretty much a lot of projects out there. About halfway through, be somewhere between 40 to 60% of the design that the engineer and the architects, whether it's a building or infrastructure, they stop. So there are multiple, like Jeff said, there are multiple milestones along the way. You have a 30% deliverable, 40% deliverable. As the client, you receive these packages of design that has been completed up to a certain point without X number of details. And the next iteration that gets submitted has more details. So every milestone that gets submitted, then somewhere between 40 to 60% design. Industry standard is that you just pause for a moment, bring in outside technical experts, or if you have them in-house, combine them all together, get as much help as you can. Like Jeff said, for this project, the practice was a sort of tabletop. Everybody poured in their expertise and their support and everything. So you look at the project to assess the cost of it, to make sure it's within the budget. Look at it to make sure that it's constructible and it's actually feasible, that you're not kind of reaching for the moon and we're designing something that's actually not able to be implemented. So look at it from those angles. And this is what this report is a result of that. At 40% design, The engineers, lead company was firm was AKRF, with all the other design firms as subconsultants to them, with the consultant at OMB. So everybody sat down and took AKRF and team's 40% design package, looked at it to make sure that it's constructible, took a cost estimate and reviewed it, and took it from there. So hope this helps a little bit.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, because the report is dated April 2018, and CB3 voted on the design on March 27th, 2018. So I'm just asking, so I'm guessing that CB3 voted on 40% of the design then. They voted on, is that something that they usually do, that they would vote 40% on the design?
Yes, Fanny. In fact, at times we vote at 40%, at 70%, and 90% on design. That way we can stay in the process of designing. So a lot of times the agencies will bring a design to us that's not entirely complete. We give feedback, maybe even a resolution. They come back to us, we give more feedback so that we stay involved in the process. We never really want to see something that's almost done before it gets to final, but that's a pretty standard practice for at least this community board. Next question from Daniel.
Hi, so my question kind of builds off what Val and Trevor and Tommy had said, and it's, my big question is, did DDC, the mayor's office, the community board, and the other agencies learn anything from the way this was rolled out? If we had this information in 2018 after of the value engineering, or could have predicted that Con Ed would have such a big impact on the plan that the community designed that wouldn't be able to be made in the way that we wanted it, that would have been helpful and make the environmental impact statement more digestible and understand where the community, where the DDC and the design was coming from. Or even better would to have the community, at least the community board, if not other stakeholders in the community, be involved through this value engineering process. I'm glad to hear that the city does this from Q, but it needs, this was a community-centered design from the beginning, and then it got cut off. So I just want to make sure that they recognize what they did wrong in implementing and passing this information on to the community. The idea of the environmental impact statement being where we learn about the design is not true to the reasoning about why we have environmental impact statements and final impact. Those are supposed to just address the impacts of the project, not be where we learn about the project itself. So did we learn anything from the way this was presented to the community?
Hi, Daniel, it's Q, DDC. Yes, great point. Short answer is painfully learned, absolutely. And I'll give you a long answer, definitely, that this has been one of the biggest lessons learned. And I can speak on behalf of my entire agency that for all of us involved in this project, it is definitely a given that we could have done it better in terms of communication and outreach with regards to that value engineering study during that phase, how it was handled and communicated. Our commissioner personally, she apologized multiple times in public hearings back during the ULURP process, as did many other agencies and all of us, and we still remain apologetic for that, and sincerely apologize for not handling this the way that every community member in this area deserved it. With that, also, kind of to our defense, kind of not, but this is an unprecedented project that none of our agencies have ever had before. We don't have a template as far as community engagement, the engineering, the process of it, the way that we had to bring in multiple agencies all together for the first time. We typically DDC, if for those that don't know what our agency does, Department of Design and Construction, we are essentially the project managers and the representative of a client who's typically another city agencies, DOT, DEP, library, anybody out there. And it's very rare that more than 2 or 3 agencies have to come together for a DDC project for us to lead that project. In this instance, a long list of agencies were involved, and it was a learning curve for us how to coordinate with everybody and all the different units that they have. So there were so many layers to it, and again, this was the process of it was so unprecedented, and the way it was unfolding back then, that's one of our biggest lessons learned right now. And in fact, with all the other coastal projects that we have that are gearing up, my team and all of us are involved. We're using this as an example to the other project teams to make sure that this is not repeated ever again. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Q, for that answer. And before we go to the last 2 questions, just to follow up a bit, because we still have BMCR, which we really haven't spent as much time as we should, the other flood project for the 2 Bridges area. I know there are a lot of agencies involved in that. And I think as a city, we really need to think how we handle coordination. A lot of these agencies sort of stick to their guns because they know that they can, and it sort of creates problems. And I think that might have been an issue here, but just keep that in mind going forward with not only this project, but for the BMCR project, which I know DDC is going to manage in the next few months. The next 2, I see this from our other co-host. I'm going to butcher your name, Marguerite.
Yes, I'm here. I don't think I didn't have my hand raised. I just had another question.
Jackie, was there? Oh, you had a question?
No, never mind.
Diane, I saw you. I'm going to get to you. Oh, I interpreted that wrong. Yes, Marguerite, you can go. I thought he was asking me if you could go.
Yeah, I just wanted to know. I thought that you said there would be no more questions about compost, but I just
there wasn't. You can go.
Okay.
Yes, you can go.
I
read the message wrong. I thought it was ask a question.
If anything else comes up, please email me, or you can reach me through Desiree.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
So I'm going to go to sorry, Jackie. I'm going to go to Diane first. I saw her hand and then it went down, but I know she was there. And then the last question will be from Tony. So Diane, and just keep in mind that we are at 8:10, so we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we are ahead of where we usually are. Jeff and Q, my question is about the timeline that you showed with the pink boxes showing what happened when. And it looks like there was at least a 6-month gap between the time that this raised the park plan started to come together at the time when the community was informed. And that includes, as far as I know, all of our elected officials, the community board, the members of the public and everything. And I'm wondering if you can comment on why that happened. Why was there a 6-month gap in communicating this information, especially in a situation where it's kind of counterintuitive that it's easier for you guys to tear down the whole park and barge in all of this dirt and build it up 10 feet higher than it is to build a flood wall. So if you could communicate, comment on why that dotted line gap is in there, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Jeff, I can quickly kick off on the graphic. Diane, thanks for flagging that, and Jeff, you can take it after that. I wanted to make sure this graphic is accurately capturing the storyline, and Desiree and I actually spent quite an amount of time today specifically on exactly what you're asking about right now, and wanted to make sure that we're not putting something there that wasn't accurate. So that's the reason for that dotted line, that if we had community engagement for the entire bar, we do recognize, again, back to what I was saying earlier, apology and all that we could have done better. We do recognize that there was a short gap in between right there, and wanted to make sure that that's being captured accurately. Jeff, go ahead.
No, I was just going to reiterate, what you said previously. I mean, I think we've all learned a tremendous lesson here. As Q mentioned, our commissioner at the Parks Committee hearing that she testified at way back when, she said we could have done better. And that is the reality of our community engagement process. And that's, there were a lot of decisions made. There were a lot of agencies involved, as Q mentioned. There was a lot of pressure to get this project moving quickly, and information could have been shared in a more timely manner.
Thank you. And our last question for this evening on this particular topic will be Tony. Committee members, keep in mind we have one more agenda item. I understand we don't have our committee members, but we're going to start that discussion tonight and move it and also continue it next month when the other committee members return. So Tony, if you can wrap this up for us with your question.
Thanks. I'll be quick, and forgive me if this is an ignorant question. I just haven't get a chance to go through the entire document yet, but I was surprised by one option I didn't see. I get that the challenge to the original design is the Con Ed utility line. It's mission critical, and I get there's probably even a homeland security issue with it because it's basically delivering power to Lower Manhattan. But was one of the alternatives looked at building in that redundancy? So essentially building in a parallel line to provide a bypass.
A parallel transmission line?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I'm honestly not sure. I don't know if any of my colleagues, I don't know if that's a decision that we would have made as a city.
And the only reason I bring it up is because of I totally get the importance of the utility line. You don't want to muck with it because I think it can't be, it's talk about uninterruptible. But it just seems like this would have been an opportune time, especially in the spirit of resiliency, to provide that redundant path.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from our experience with the utilities, it's a challenge to even get them to move their lines, let alone build new lines. So we have these meetings years in advance where we tell them we're coming to put a new water main and that will benefit the entire community, and you need to move your steam main, whatever the case may be, and then they wait until our contractor's already on board, and then it of course inevitably delays our projects. I know this community board is actually familiar with some of those projects.
Hey Jeff, real quick response about the Con Ed transmission lines. Hi, this is Eric Yalevich, again from DDC. So it's not just one transmission line. In some areas, there may be as many as 7 lines here, and they're called oilostatic lines. And they have oil that's actually cooling and flowing around the oils, or around the transmission lines. So in maybe one location, if you took a cross section, you'd see 7 lines of varying diameters. So there may be some redundancies built into that system automatically, but we can take we can take that back and just confirm that. But again, there are multiple lines here that we just say are in one location of transmission lines.
Thank you.
Sure.
And thanks to team for appearing once again. I will contact you after our full board, or no, after our executive, well, sometime next week to talk about planning for the next 6 months, because I think we need to look at this not as a month-to-month thing, but for a long term, so we can sort of make sure we have the proper information and more efficient meetings. So thank you for coming. I'm glad to get this portion done by 8:16. I think that's a record. So I appreciate your time and your team.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
For the committee members, we're going to go into a little discussion about our goals for this year. So I know folks are still on that are listening, but if you want to listen further to talk about goals, you're welcome to it. Well, I know I started the meeting off with talking about making the meetings a little more efficient, and also, we're making them shorter, but I'd like to hear comments. I've gotten some emails already. I'll read some of them. I don't know if anyone watches late night shows, but these are equivalent of mean tweets. In fact, someone said I wasn't mean enough. Someone said that I don't cut into people and cut off people enough. The meetings are too long. Maybe we should meet twice a month. maybe we shouldn't meet at all. We should decrease the number of people on parks. But those are just some of the things that I've heard. I'd like to know what folks have to say, and I've heard it all, so I'm not gonna, this is about our committee, not just about me, but I'd like to first talk about what you think are our goals for this year. And Michael, you can just go ahead. If you're anyone who's in.
Can they stop sharing the screen so that we can?
Oh yeah, who's still on? That's right.
Jackie can stop that though. He can just cut it off. I mean, I think part of the reason our meetings have gone so long so lately is because, as you said, Trevor, a number of times, our whole eastern water way is under construction. And, I think that, there was a reason that we asked the ESCR team to come every month, because there was, a history of not getting updates from them. And I mean, I'm not sure if we need them to come every month anymore, unless there's something really significant. But I feel like a lot of it, like at least an hour of our meetings has been the ESCR team every month. And a lot of that is also, again, I know that the community has some serious concerns about this project, as do many of the board members as well. But I think a lot of times we get caught up in repetitive conversations that have happened month after month after month about this project. And I think you've done a really good job of trying to cut that off. But I think part of it is our agendas are just too long, and I think maybe there should be a cap on the number of agendas, a number of items that can put on the agenda any month.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do, and I've already talked with the team, is that I don't think the ESCR team needs to come every single month. They've been doing that, I think, for 2 years, which is a very long time. A lot of it is repetitive, but they will have to come back when there's something important. I think an update will help us. The agendas are very long, and unfortunately parks and land use, I mean, we're often, well, SLA, but that's a whole nother category. A lot of the stuff we have is time sensitive, including the resolution on the signs tonight. So we're going to try and limit that. Next month, we are limiting it to just the Pier 42 and some other things to address exactly what you said of having too many items on the agenda. I think that's, Michael, you know that number better than me.
What?
719-646. Is that a committee member?
David Adams.
Yeah, sorry.
David Adams.
I don't have the participants thing open. Yeah, that's David Adams.
David Adams. I'm off location.
Okay, you have your hand raised, or you just did that by mistake?
Yes, I wanted to. We spend a lot of time in these meetings discussing city contracts. Now the process, and although it's curious for the people, but that's a standard practice is that we discuss each meeting. It's not that integral to our discussion. To have that, this takes time, which really doesn't add to what we have to discuss. It's a general information thing.
Are you talking about from a committee standpoint, or for when the public asks a question?
For the public, I understand why they're asking the question, but it's not what we're here for. If you want to, especially, with the city process to getting a contract is available for people to see. They don't have to come to our meeting and ask the process.
No, I hear you, and that's not the only category that we kind of focus on. I just don't really know how I can try to limit the public from asking questions about that, because we do spend a lot of time on that particular topic, but I will take that as a room for improvement. Committee members, I know there's other folks who want to talk. Please, this is your opportunity.
No.
And not just what's wrong, but what our goals are for this upcoming year.
So Trevor, when you ask that question about what our goals are, like, can you talk a little bit more about what do you mean? Like, what are the goals of what we want to accomplish?
Yes, and this obviously was given to me from the office. So I'm interpreting it as, how do we make it more efficient for me? Because I think it's hard to talk about goals. Our goals are what comes to our committee. We don't really have planning for parks, we don't even know what's going to go on with parks this year. If there's an improvement going on, we hear about it and we vote on it. So I'm interpreting that request as to how we can make our meetings a lot more efficient. But if you can think of a goal, I mean, I'd like to see ESCR done by the end of this year. That's not going to happen. The goals are kind of difficult, but if we want to put goals at making it more efficient and having the agenda shorter and to try and focus the discussion on Parks Committee things as opposed to things like city contracts, then I have no problem putting that as a goal. Carlin.
Yeah, I think we should address this park lighting issue. We can get someone from the mayor's office, someone from DOT, and someone from Parks. Not just someone who will give us a generic answer, we'll look into it. But this parks lighting is really it's a public hazard. It's a safety issue. I
agree with you, Carlin.
All right.
No, I agree. And I think that should be a goal. And that's actually a great idea. I mean, to get a real discussion about that, because it's not just, I know you've talked about your park, or not your park, but Columbus Park, but someone talked about East River Park now having lights earlier on. But you're right, I think we should cover that within the next couple of months. I don't think that should wait to the end of the year either. So thank you.
Trevor, whatever happened with that, I think it was maybe a year or two ago when each of the committee members sort of took a handful of parks and did like an assessment of
that was park? At least 5 years ago.
No.
Yes, it was.
Really?
It was at least 5 years ago. And one of the reasons why we paused that is because of the whole, the city came in with its, I forget the name of it, when they approved a bunch of our parks in our neighborhood.
Community Parks Initiative.
Yeah, and almost every single park in our neighborhood got improvements. I think that might be something we can do this year. I know it was a little difficult creating that survey and then people going out to parks, but I think that's something we can do this year. In fact, if you want to volunteer to make a survey, I'd rather it be simple.
I think I made the last one. So
right, but there was some issue with.
It was long.
No, it was also there was a committee member that took responsibility for that, but there's no use talking about that. But I think that's something we can also do, where we map out the parks and get some information on that.
I'm pretty sure I have the last one. I'll take a look. I'll
sure.
look at it and see.
Right, so we're gonna do that. Michael's gonna be in charge of the park survey and assigning people, because that was another issue.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough people spread out over our district, which is unfortunate. But. Anyone else?
My only other goal would be to meet in person sometime again.
Yeah, maybe this summer. I think the governor just announced that you can have concerts and stuff, so maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would also help with the length issue, because I think, it's been great to have this convenience of meeting online, but I think that's also brought a lot more people to all of our meetings that normally wouldn't make the effort to schlep over to the senior center.
Yeah, I think that goes for every meeting, because I know ours aren't the only meetings that are going very long. It's a universal thing. It's very easy to sign on. I think we may see a hybrid going forward, where it's online and people in person, which I think is going to be difficult. It's going to be a challenge to manage, but we're in a new world, so maybe that will stay. The other goal I have is, and I'm talking to committee members here, is that, and I actually borrowed this from Jackie, who's he's still on, and thank you for co-hosting this. I don't know how, Michael, I'll give you all kinds of credit, because I was pressing buttons and trying to keep up with stuff.
He is back. I was wondering when he's gonna ask that,
because I was like, admit this person, what am I doing here? But I give you credit, because
it's easy. And
it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a challenge. But we have 11 members on our committee. I may look to add a public member. Obviously, we're going to get some new members mid-year. I'm trying to keep this at 11 to 12 members. I think it helps speed our meetings, but also keep them, so that we get into meaningful discussions. But we need to hear from everyone. And I know there are folks who don't necessarily speak up I think it's helpful if we hear from everyone. I don't want to go around and actually ask people. I think that makes people feel uncomfortable, but I think it could be useful if we sort of think about, the agenda item and just be prepared to say things. I'm just going over some of the emails I've got, and this is from everyone, whether it's political or folks in the public or just some random person who thinks that Parks meetings is what they do every month, is that they don't know or they don't hear from all our committee, and they would like to hear from other voices, and I think that's important. I know it's difficult to do sometimes because some of these topics are repetitive at best, and it's hard to ask something when we've seen an update from ESCR for 27 straight months, but I think it'd be helpful if all of us could think about participating just a little bit more, even if you're writing it in the chat, because the chat only goes to the co-host, that'd be helpful. And I said before 8:30, so it's 8:28. If anyone else has any other questions or comments,
motion to adjourn.
Or you can also email me, but no more mean tweets. They were fun. I'm going to let Brian speak, and I know what he's going to speak about. And Brian, I think I did, but Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you all probably know what I'm going to be talking about right now. Community board applications still open, still available. Do it online if you can. The due date is 5 p.m. Monday, February the 22nd. I'll drop the link in the chat if I can, but I won't take up any more of your time either.
All right, thank you, Brian. Michael, you can repeat that motion. Well, I need to take attendance first because I'm also doing the minutes, which is another thing. These are going to be brief minutes, I can tell you that. Trevor K. Webster. David Adams.
He just muted himself. There he is.
David Adams.
You get me? Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yaron Altman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Ryan Gillian. Valentina Jones.
Yes. This is the end, right?
Yes, this is.
Okay.
Michael Marino.
Yes.
Somehow made both attendance. Robert Chattel. Josephine Velez. Josie.
Yes, I'm walking the dogs. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Troy Velez.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you, folks. Meeting is now adjourned. We will see you at full board.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.